John Scott Harrison is the only person who can claim to be the son of one president and the father to another. But what happened to him after death was so heinous, it became known as the Harrison Horror. I'm Bob Summers, and this is a ghoulish presidential story. John Scott Harrison, former Ohio congressman and gentleman farmer, was the last surviving child of the 9th president, William Henry Harrison, and the father of the future 23rd president, Benjamin Harrison. On the evening of May 25th, 1878, John Scott died suddenly in his sleep. 4 days later, he was buried at Congress Green Cemetery in North Bend, Ohio. However, before the burial, the family noticed that the adjacent grave of a family friend, Augustus Devon, who had died 11 days earlier of tuberculosis at the age of 23, had been robbed. The Harrison family vowed to find Augustus's body and return it. Horrified and concerned, Benjamin, along with his camera-shy brothers John and Carter, took precautions to ensure their father's grave was protected. The grave was already brick vaulted, so they buried the metal casket deeper than normal, 8 feet deep. They added 3 large stone slabs, a large one at the head where the grave robbers focused their attention, and 2 smaller ones at the feet. They then covered the stone slabs with cement and waited for it to dry before covering it with dirt. And they paid a watchman $30 to guard the grave for 30 nights, until the body decomposed enough to make it useless for dissection. Dissection? Yeah. Throughout the 1800s, it was common for medical schools to steal recently buried bodies and use them to learn about anatomy or practice surgical procedures. Medical colleges with 1,000 students needed about 300 cadavers per semester to support their medical students. So, they would rely on resurrectionists, another name for grave robbers or body snatchers. With all of these precautions, Benjamin felt safe enough to return to Indianapolis later the same day of the funeral. The following day, Benjamin's brother, John, who had stayed behind, received a lead on Augustus Devon's corpse. So, armed with a search warrant and backed up by 3 Cincinnati policemen, they looked for Augustus at the Medical College of Ohio. When John Harrison and party arrived, they were met by an irritated janitor, A.Q. Marshall, who escorted them while they searched the building. In the cellar, with a door to the alley, they found a chute that ran the entire 5-story height of the building, but they could not see anything in the chute. Elsewhere, they found boxes of assorted body parts, but no Augustus Devon. Marshall, the janitor, eventually said he needed to alert the faculty, so the police let him go, but they had a deputy discreetly tail him. Marshall unwittingly led them to an upstairs room with a windlass and rope running into a square hole in the floor, used for moving cadavers between the floors. The hole opened into the chute they saw earlier in the cellar. One of the policemen saw that the rope was taut. They turned the windlass crank and slowly pulled up the naked body of a man whose head was covered with a cloth. John immediately dismissed this as Augustus Devon's body, since this body was more robust than someone emaciated by tuberculosis, and older than the 23-year-old Augustus. The policeman insisted they check nonetheless. When John Harrison lifted the cloth, the blood drained from his face. "It's father," he gasped. Less than 24 hours after having been buried with extensive grave-robbing countermeasures, the body of John Scott Harrison had been stolen and brought to the Ohio Medical College. Back in North Bend, 3 relatives visiting Harrison's grave also discovered the robbery. The stones at the foot of the coffin were displaced. The casket was drilled into, and the lid had been pried up so the body could be roped by the feet and pulled out. The thieves must have witnessed the measures taken at Harrison's burial, or they would have gone for the head and been foiled by the much larger and heavier slab covering that end. The watchman had no explanation. Too bad they had paid him in advance. Upon receiving a telegram of the finding less than 24 hours after arriving home, Benjamin Harrison acted immediately. He contacted the Pinkerton Detective Agency to conduct a private investigation since he did not fully trust the Cincinnati Police Department. Then, Benjamin boarded a train back to Cincinnati. Carter Harrison, Benjamin's brother and one of the family members to discover his father's disturbed grave, went to Cincinnati to tell his family what had happened. Carter told John that their father's body had been stolen. John told Carter that he already knew, because he had found it. Just before Benjamin Harrison arrived from Indianapolis, Carter decided to make a quick visit to the Ohio Medical College to examine the spot where his father's body had been discovered. At the college, he encountered Dr. William Wallace Seeley, who was the secretary of the medical college as well as a professor. The meeting did not go well. Dr. Seeley, who was already incensed by newspaper criticism leveled at the medical college and the faculty, wasn't able to read the room when he indelicately remarked to the grief-stricken Carter that the entire affair didn't really matter since it would all be the same for everyone in the afterlife. Neither the public nor the Harrisons would forget or forgive that remark. The medical college was thoroughly criticized in the press, but the faculty was boldly unrepentant. Sure, they were sorry such an important individual had found his way into their dissection room instead of the usual paupers, but that, they insisted, was the cost of training competent doctors. In the papers, they denied any knowledge, involvement, or wrongdoing. After arriving in Cincinnati, Benjamin applied pressure to have the janitor arrested for receiving and concealing the unlawfully removed body of their dear father. But the janitor did not stay behind bars for long. The entire college faculty pooled their resources and immediately posted the $5,000 bond, or over $150,000 today. This show of support for the person the public had come to regard as an accomplice in the grave robbery further angered the citizens of Cincinnati. Several people suggested mob action, but this was quickly vetoed by Benjamin Harrison. In Cincinnati, things went from bad to worse when the Medical College of Ohio took the position that the attention this case was commanding was hurting their chances of obtaining additional cadavers for dissection. That set off the press once again. Benjamin Harrison published an anguished and furious rebuttal in an open letter. In the letter, he described the condition of his father to implicate the medical school. Your janitor denied that it laid upon your tables, but the clean incision into the carotid artery, the thread with which it was ligatured, the injected veins, prove him a liar. Who made the incision and injected that body? Gentlemen of the faculty? The surgeons who examined this work say that he was no bungler. While he lay upon your table, the long white beard, which the hands of infant grandchildren had often stroked in love, was rudely shorn from his face. Have you so little care of your college that an unseen and an unknown man may do all this? Who took him from that table and hung him by the neck in the pit? With neither answers nor indictments against the faculty forthcoming, Benjamin Harrison filed a civil lawsuit. The outcomes of the criminal and civil cases are lost to history, as all records were destroyed when the Hamilton County Courthouse burned down in 1884. John Scott Harrison was later reinterred in a family friend's vault at Spring Grove Cemetery just outside of Cincinnati. Augustus Devon's body was found 3 weeks later when authorities finally got a clue from another medical school janitor that led them to Michigan. Augustus's body was found in the pickling vats at the University of Michigan Medical College in Ann Arbor. In reaction to the Harrison horror, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, and Michigan passed amended anatomy acts that increased the penalties for grave robbing and allowed medical schools to use unclaimed bodies of people who died in the care of the state for anatomical dissection: paupers, orphans, the insane, and prisoners. But enforcement was lax, and with demand still outstripping supply, resurrectionists would continue their lucrative trade in the United States well into the 20th century. Thanks for watching. If you thought this video was haunting, please help out the channel, like and subscribe, and please visit POTUS.com to learn more interesting facts about the presidents.